Let's talk about another possible wide receiver trade target for the Green Bay Packers. We talked a lot about Romeo Doubs last week. Let's move it to Christian Watson because Bleacher Report has named him as a trade block candidate after the NFL draft. Of course, the NFL draft is where Green Bay picked not only one, but two really talented wide receivers within the first three rounds. So that's what we're discussing on the Packers Report. Welcome in. I am your host, Joey Peterson. So delighted to be joined by every single one of you guys today. I got a challenger for us before we get into the content. Here's our most liked videos in channel history. 466 is at the top, then a couple of 300s. At the very bottom, at number 5, is 308 likes. I need and I want this video to crack that top 5, okay? Need every one of you guys. If you're watching, if you're listening, if you got the ability to click that thumbs up button, do it right now because we're getting this in the top 5. It's free to do, does not cost a dime, helps us out a ton, so I'd appreciate it if you guys like today's video. Let's start, alrighty, shall we? Are the Packers trading Christian Watson? That is the question we've been asked today, and that is the question we are answering on today's show because, like I said, Bleacher Report, they named 6 trade candidates, 6 wide receivers that they believe might be on the trade block after the NFL draft and, of course, after the George Pickens trade. Christian Watson, John Mechie, Treylon Burks, Quentin Johnson, Alan Lazard, Rashid Shaheed. Now, let's hear a little bit from Matt Holder, the writer for Bleacher Report, on what he had to say about the Packers wide receiver, Christian Watson. Because a lot of those guys seem like maybe legitimate targets. A lot of them seem like they might be getting pulled out of thin air. Here's what Holder had to say about our guy. The North Dakota State product has battled several injuries, missing 13 regular season games as a pro. That likely played a factor in general manager Brian Gutekunst's decision to use a first-round pick on Golden. Additionally, the Packers' receiving room is getting crowded as Gutekunst double-dipped at the position in the draft, taking Savion Williams from TCU in the 3rd round. Williams from TCU, and he's on top of already having Romeo Doubs, Jayden Reed, and Dontavian Wicks on the roster. So I will say, Matt Holder did make a couple of good points. The injury is a really good point. The fact that it's a really crowded room is also a really good point, right? Because both those facts are extremely true. And both of those facts don't necessarily lean towards Christian Watson, I don't want to say being comfortable, but I'd say being 100% comfortable with his spot in this room. The injury history is a real problem, okay? And I know we talked about it. We had a video last Monday go out about how actually he's been getting better. We'll hear from him in just a second. But still, you cannot ignore this. An unspecified knee tear in June of his rookie year, then a pulled hamstring in September, a concussion in October, the following August, a hamstring strain, then again a hamstring strain in December, then an ankle sprain, then a knee bruise, then an ACL tear, and it's like, when is it going to stop? Because it's so frustrating, because it's not like it's just one thing. There are those guys that just, they can't get over that ankle injury. They can't get over that knee injury. But he's dealt with a hamstring. He's dealt with a concussion. He's dealt with a knee bruise. He's dealt with an ankle sprain. He's dealt with everything under the sun except, knock on wood, anything that's happened with his arms, his upper body, or torso region, I should say. There's a reason I'm not a doctor. But still, regardless, you look at Christian Watson and you love the player, you love the prospect, but you hate the fact that he can't stay on the field. And the ACL tear that happened this past January was the worst of it. Fortunately, though, his recovery is going very well. Here's from Christian Watson. Recovery is going really well. I'm in a really good spot, just keeping the mentality there, just working. I've got a couple more months ahead of me, but I'll keep attacking every day. I'm in a really, really good spot. And of course, kind of like I said just a couple of weeks ago, don't take him saying, I've got a couple months ahead of me, as saying, you know what? I've just got a couple more months dealing with this. I'll be back in August. I'll be back in September in a couple more months. No, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's more he's saying, I've got a couple more months of really strong rehab, and then we get into maybe the more positional stuff. Maybe after a couple months is when he sees himself getting to another side possibly and just kind of saying, you know what? I can start doing things that I could do before. And it's no worries, Moose. We can push it across. Here's what Matt LaFleur had to say about Christian Watson. He looks like a freak, like he always does, in a positive way. Just a great attitude. He's working hard. That's all you can really ask of anybody. That's the great thing about Christian Watson, is that regardless of the injury status, you know he's going to come in and work his hardest and do his best to get as right as quickly as he can. It's just unfortunate that this has kind of had to happen a lot in his career. He's had to come back from injuries a lot. Let me know down below. Should Green Bay trade Christian Watson? If you think they should, go ahead. Simple answer, yes, in the comment section. And if you don't think so, give me a no and tell me why right now. I'll be honest, I don't want Green Bay to trade Watson. That's not what today's video is about. Today's video is not about me pounding the table and saying, get what you can for Christian Watson, because I don't believe in him. Because I can't say that. It'd be a lie. I do believe in Christian Watson. And sure, the last 3 years, his career so far hasn't necessarily gone to plan. But I mean, geez Louise, 17 yards a catch, 14 touchdowns in 3 seasons. He's still putting up phenomenal numbers without being in the everyday starting rotation because of, the way that the injury bug has been biting him for the entirety of his career. And look, I get it. You did draft a guy, and his name is Matthew Golden, right? And a lot of people see that, and they say, look, this team drafted Golden. There's not room for 2 guys like Matthew Golden and like Christian Watson on this roster. I don't necessarily see it the same way. Sure, they are similar-ish type wide receivers, in the fact that they both primarily play on the outside, but they are so vastly different, in my opinion. Watson's 5 years older. Watson's 5 inches taller. Watson's 13 pounds heavier, and I would not be surprised if he was even more than that, right? Watson's just a totally different wide receiver because his build is totally different. And Matthew Golden, funny enough, for a guy who's smaller, actually plays in the slot less than Christian Watson does. 23.9% of the time, as I knock over a computer. And then if you look at their average depth of target, Christian Watson's is 18.7, which is higher than Matthew Golden's is. Yes, they play similar type positions. Yes, they both are X wide receivers. But no, they're not the same guy. So just because you have Christian Watson and just because you have Matthew Golden doesn't mean you can't have either of the other two. You can have them both on the same team. You can have your cake and eat it too, is what I'm trying to say. However, you still got to look at the wide receiver room, and you still got to think about what Matt Holder had to say about that. And he's right. He's correct. This wide receiver room is incredibly crowded, which I think is a really good problem to have, right? That's one of those things that going into the offseason, going into the draft, after the 2024 season, everybody said this wide receiver room needs a little bit of a shakeup. Well, they got it. They got it big time. You add Golden, you add Williams, you add McCole Hardman, that shakes things up in a good way, for the better. Because more competition, more good guys in this room means 2 things. Number 1, more competition for each other. And number 2, just more weapons for Jordan Love. I would not be surprised at all, because of how many guys are already in this room, if some changes were made. I'm not saying those are going to be trade changes, but I'd be shocked if you went into 2025 with that room looking the exact same that it does right now. I think training camp is going to tell you a lot. I think you're going to find out a lot in the months of August, the months of September, preseason. I think that's going to be a very, very fun time to keep following of this team. I need you guys to shout him out. Comment section down below. Name a Packers wide receiver you feel is the most likely to get traded. We've talked Romeo Doubs. We're talking Christian Watson right now. It's time to you guys. Let me know down below. Shout out the Packers wide receiver you will feel most likely will get traded. All that to say, everything we talked about, I don't think he's going to end up being traded. Okay? I just think they like him too much. I think he's too talented. I still think they believe that his ceiling is far too high. I would be really, really surprised if somebody traded for Christian Watson. And that's my reason, number 1. About why I don't think he's going to get traded. I don't always just think it's necessarily one-sided on the Packers side. Like, it takes two teams to make a trade. And one of those teams, if they're going to trade for Christian Watson, is going to trade for a guy who just tore his ACL in January and is also only has 1 year left on his deal. That makes zero sense whatsoever. Like, none. And also, number two, I don't think Matt LaFleur is looking to move on from him because you got Romeo Doubs also on that rookie deal. Also, 1 year left on his deal, on his contract. And I think if you just were to ask Matt LaFleur which of those two guys he likes better, which of those two guys he sees a bigger future in Green Bay, I honestly think he would answer you, Christian Watson.